Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's hearing. For those of you who are expecting it this morning, we apologize, but we are glad to be here at a little after 2. First thing we're going to do is roll call the commissioners as we do on all of our virtual hearings. So if you will please answer, commissioners. Vice Chair Belser.
Present.
Commissioner Whitfield. Commissioner Whitfield.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
Commissioner Irvin.
Here.
Great. Commissioner Williams is serving our country in Iraq, and Chairman Randall is here. Mr. Butler, if you will please read the docket.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and other members of the Commission. This is docket number 2019-281S, the application of Palmetto Utilities Incorporated for an increase in rates and charges for the provision of sewer service and for modifications to certain terms and conditions of the provision of sewer service. Please take notice that a virtual hearing on this matter has been scheduled to begin on July 13, 2020 at 2 p.m. before the Commission, originating in the Commission's hearing room, 101 Executive Center Drive, Suite 100, Saluda Building, Columbia, South Carolina, for the purpose of receiving testimony and evidence from all interested parties. Mr. Chairman and other members of the Commission, the docket is in order.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. We'll now take appearances from the parties. First, Palmetto Utilities.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. This is John Hafer. I'm with the law firm of Wilby & Hafer. With me is Andrew Hand, another lawyer in our office. We represent the applicant, Palmetto Utilities Incorporated, in this case.
Welcome, Mr. Hafer and Mr. Hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Roger Hall, Assistant Consumer Advocate with the Department of Consumer Affairs. Also with me is Carrie Gruby-Leibarker, the Department's Administrator and Consumer Advocate.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hall. Okay, Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jenny Pittman and Jeffrey Nelson and Christopher Huber on behalf of OMS.
Welcome, Ms. Pittman. Okay. Okay, parties, are there any preliminary matters that we need to deal with?
This is John Hafer. Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hafer.
As the Commission is aware, yesterday stipulations reached between the applicant, Palmetto Utilities Incorporated, and the Office of Regulatory Staff were filed. I would begin with asking that the Commission deem the stipulations amended to correct an incorrect docket number. By default, it should say docket number 2019-281-S. Inadvertently, it says 2018-291-S.
Some of them are in Palmetto Utilities.
I would like at this time to give a brief overview of the stipulation. It resolves disputes between the applicant and the Office of Regulatory Staff, as is encouraged by the Administrative Procedures Act, as well as the Title 58 provisions, which are recited in the stipulations. It recognizes in rate base less than half of the $18 million investment by Palmetto Utility in assets formerly owned by the City of Columbia, which were approved to be acquired by the Commission in 2013. It adopts nearly all of the Office of Regulatory Staff accounting adjustments. It caps rate case expense. It will result in a monthly rate of $54.93 for 1 year beginning September 20, 2020, which is an increase of $2.83 or 5.4% per month. And after that 1 year, the rate would be $59.87, which is an increase of $7.79 or 14.9%. The stipulation returns to customers $2,032,146 to account for the reduction in the company's federal income tax liability on and after January 1, 2018. It requires the company to freeze its rates for a 3-year period or until August 20th, 23. Requires the company to conduct a cost of service study to assist the commission in determining in the company's next rate case whether a usage-sensitive rate design should be employed by the company. Lastly, it reiterates the company's commitment, which it made to an intervener who is no longer in the case, to contribute $150,000 to a nonprofit entity over a 3-year period for a restricted fund to assist qualifying Palmetto Utilities customers with paying their Palmetto Utilities bills. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would move the stipulation as the caption is proposed to be amended into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
Okay, the stipulation will be entered as hearing exhibit number 3. Okay, anything
Thank you, Mr.
else?
Chairman.
Thank you. Anything else preliminarily that we need to do, any of the parties?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jenny Pittman for ORS.
Yes, Ms. Pittman.
Just real briefly, ORS would like to thank the commissioners and the commission staff for accommodating us as we worked with the company to reach resolutions in this proceeding. ORS respectfully submits that the resolutions reached in these stipulations are in the best interest of PUI's customers, and we recommend them for commission approval.
Thank you, Ms. Pittman.
Thank you.
Okay. There's nothing else. Okay, Mr. Hall, do you have anything? Just want to make sure.
Sure. As you know, we have not joined the stipulations. We did work with ORS and PUI, and while we do appreciate several of the concessions that were made, unfortunately, we were not able to agree with them on all of the terms. We see our role as a consumer advocate as you know, representing the interests of consumers. In that role, we feel we need to advocate for the best deal for the consumers. Unfortunately, here, while this may be a good deal, we just did not think it was the best scenario for the consumers. Therefore, we look forward to presenting our positions to the commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. Okay, I think it's time. Let's move on to Palmetto, and let's present your witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant would call Ralph Walker.
Okay, and Mr. Walker.
Hey, John, can you hear me?
Mr. Walker, we can hear you.
Yeah.
And first thing we need to do is get you sworn in as a witness. So if you'd raise your right hand, do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would, Mr. Walker, please state your name and your business address for the record.
Ralph Walker. I'm responsible for energy infrastructure at Packlet Milliken. My address is 550 South Main Street, Suite 601 in Greenville, South Carolina.
Mr. Walker, have you caused to be pre-filed in this case direct testimony consisting of 4 pages?
I have.
Do you have any revisions, corrections, deletions, or other changes to your testimony?
I do. Changes are the deletions reflected in paragraph 17A of the stipulation, page 1, line 21. Delete the phrase, "our concerns with thee." And also on page 2, line 1, delete the words "through treatment, through process." And that's all the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the benefit of the court reporter, because of the time delay, I would like to repeat those changes to make sure that they are incorporated.
Okay.
That was page 1, line 21. Delete the phrase, quote, "our concerns with thee," close quote. Page 2, line 1, delete words "through treatment," through the word "process." Mr. Chairman, Mr. Walker is available for questions by the consumer advocate or by the commission.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hall?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Mr. Walker?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Belser?
Good afternoon, Mr. Walker. Are you
Good
there?
afternoon.
In your direct testimony on page 3, you discussed some capital expenditures that in connection with what you termed the Northern Pipeline Project. Are you familiar with that testimony?
I am, yes.
And those capital expenditures, according to your testimony, were approximately $80 million in expenditures. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And were those expenditures captured in the last rate case?
We ended up getting an incremental rate increase equal to about a 3.5% return on those dollars spent, the $80 million. So we felt like we did not get what we deserved for making that investment.
Well, what I'm asking is, were those investments included in rate base in the last rate case?
I believe some of them were, but all of them were not.
Okay,
We did not have all the bills. Excuse me, go ahead.
do you know how much the company is seeking to recover from those investments in the current rate case? And if you can't answer
I
that,
do not know.
can you tell me who can?
I think Mr. Dottie can answer that, and he will be testifying.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Hafer, I think we neglected to have Mr. Walker's testimony read into the record as though given orally from the stand, so we'll need a motion for that from you, please, sir.
We did, and I was just getting ready to ask. I apologize. I would move that Mr. Walker's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Mr. Walker's pre-filed direct testimony, as corrected, will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
Might I just engage in a brief redirect with Mr. Walker?
Just
regarding
getting to that right now, so go ahead, Mr. Hafer.
Mr. Walker, I believe Commissioner Belser was trying to determine whether or not any part of the $80 million investment that was sought to be included in the last rate case was disallowed and being sought in this rate case. Am I not correct that the $80 million was included in the last rate case?
It was included, but as I said, we earned, okay.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Hafer?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any recross on that redirect? Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Walker, thank you for your testimony, and you may step down.
Thank you.
Mr. Hafer, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant we call Brian Stone.
Okay, we'll get Brian Stone once we see him. There we go. Okay, Mr. Stone, welcome. If we can get you to raise your right hand and we'll swear you in. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Stone, would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Brian D. Stone. My business address is Palmetto Utilities, Inc., 1710 Wood Creek Farms Road, Elgin, South Carolina.
Mr. Stone, where are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the parent company of Palmetto Utilities, which is Nye Packlet Milliken Utilities. I'm the Chief Operating Officer.
Have you caused to be pre-filed in this case testimony consisting of 6 typewritten pages?
Yes.
Do you have any changes, revisions, correction, or deletions to your testimony?
Yes, I have one change. That change is on page 3, line 16. Strike 30,000 and replace it with 28,000.
With that single revision, if I were to ask you the questions in your pre-filed direct testimony today, would your answers from the stand be the same as printed therein?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would move that Mr. Stone's pre-filed direct testimony as revised be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Stone's pre-filed direct testimony as revised will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stone, please answer any questions the Consumer Advocate Council or the commissioners may have for you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, questions?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple questions. Mr. Stone, how are you?
Good, thank you.
If you'll bear with me, I'm going to try to share my screen here. And are you able to see that?
It's half of it's on my screen and half it's off.
Can you see lines 1 through 7?
I can see vertically about one half your screen. Half of it roughly is cut off.
Okay, let me try something else. We can move forward without it.
It looks like you have the last page of my testimony up.
Yes, I'm showing page 6, lines 2 through 7, 1 through 7 of your direct testimony.
Yes. I have it in front of me as well.
Mr. Chairman, can the commission see the screen?
Yes, we can see it. Need to make it a little bit bigger, but it was bigger, and there you go.
Okay, great. Okay. Mr. Stone, so as you can see here, you're discussing the past projects that PUI has built in different construction that's gone on, correct?
Correct.
So it says here that you do not see a need for major investments in treatment plants or other effluent discharge pipelines for the foreseeable future. Is that correct? In other words, does that mean that you primarily see operations and maintenance expenses for the foreseeable future for the company?
Yes, those as well as what I would describe as opportunity capital, which would be if we see an opportunity to make improvements to our system for efficiency or cost savings, for example.
Do you foresee any significant capital expenditures in the foreseeable future?
Well, I guess that depends on what you call significant. For what I think of as significant, when you look at the last several years and the 3 large projects that totaled about $65 million, no, we do not see any foreseeable projects of that magnitude.
You also note in that testimony that the company is well positioned for long-term growth, correct?
Correct.
I live in Columbia. I'm fairly familiar with PUI's service area. That area seems to be constantly growing. Would you agree?
Yes.
Have you estimated how many additional customers the company might expect in the next year, 2 years, or 5 years?
We have had a study performed. The growth has been fairly consistent for our system, for that part of our system, and it has tended to be in the 800 to 1,000 customers order of magnitude per year of growth.
Per year, so potentially up to 5,000 more customers in the next 5 years?
If that pattern continues.
All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have. See if I can stop sharing my screen now.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Hall. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Belzer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Stone. It's good to see you today.
After.
I'm gonna just give you a heads up, and I'm gonna kind of go along the same lines that I was just talking with Mr. Walker about. So, there's your tip-off. In your testimony on page 3, I believe you discussed 3 significant rate base additions that were included in the 2017 rate case. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was the Northern Pipeline, the expansion of the Spears Creek wastewater treatment plant, and the water pipeline. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
And then on pages 4 and 5, you discussed 3 significant capital projects that the company is seeking to have included in rate base in the current rate case. Is that correct?
I believe there are 4 projects, but
Okay.
yes, that is correct.
Could you list those for me?
Yes, ma'am. In order of my testimony, the bottom of page 4, the project referred to as the GIS mapping and AMS system. On the top of page 5, the road widening pipeline relocations, then the solids handling system upgrade, and then the industrial park pipeline redirect.
And in your testimony, the road widening project was a gross cost of $1.59 million, but after some reimbursement, the net cost was slightly more than $1.2 million. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Where in the application or testimonies or exhibits would I find the amounts of each of these additions to rate base, so that I could say the road widening costs this, the solids handling system upgrade costs this, the industrial park pipeline redirect costs this? Where would I find that?
That's a capital project cost accounting question, and so I would defer to Mr. Dodday.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Hafer, any redirect?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Stone, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your testimony, and you may step down. Okay, Mr. Hafer, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant we call Ms. Andrina Powell-Baker.
Okay, we'll wait to get her picture up. There we go. Hello, Ms. Powell-Baker. We need to get your microphone on, and we need to get you to raise your right hand, and we'll swear you in. Okay, do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, we can't hear you yet, so maybe we need to. Okay, maybe it's through the operator, through Mr. Carlos. Ms. Andrina Powell-Baker is on the line. I didn't do that.
Mr.
I don't
Chairman,
hear her connected, sir.
Okay, let's try now. Ms. Baker, all right, we're still not getting her.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hafer.
Thank you. Ms. Powell-Baker is testifying from the exact same location as Mr. Stone was, so there shouldn't be any issue on our end. I do have somebody going to check, though.
Okay, thank you. We're checking
Yes,
from this end as well.
This is the operator opening Brian Stone's line in that case.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. On Brian Stone's line. Okay, try that again, Ms.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
And so, and we've sworn you in. Do we need to do it again? Okay, we just need to hear the I do from the swearing in.
I do.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, now Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you please state your full name and business address for the record?
My name is Andrina Powell Baker, and my business address is 420 River Street, Lockhart, South Carolina.
Ms. Powell Baker, where are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed at Lockhart Power Company in the capacity of Community Relations Manager and Business Development Manager. I also serve in the same capacity at Nye Packlet Milliken Utilities.
And is Nye Packlet Milliken Utilities an indirect owner of Palmetto Utilities, Inc.?
That is correct.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in this case testimony consisting of 7 typewritten pages?
That's correct.
Do you have any changes to your pre-filed testimony?
I do. Page 4.
Give those to the court reporter slowly.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hafer, I didn't understand what you said.
I asked, would you give those changes to the court reporter slowly?
I will. Page 4, line 16. Strike the number 3 in parentheses and insert the number 5.
With that revision, Ms. Powell Baker, if I were to ask you the questions in your pre-file testimony today from the witness stand, would your answers be the same as printed therein?
That is correct.
Did you also attach 2 exhibits to your testimony totaling 12 pages?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would move that Ms. Powell Baker's pre-filed direct testimony as revised be copied into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Ms. Powell Baker's pre-filed testimony that's revised will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
And I would move her 2 exhibits totaling 12 pages as the next hearing exhibit.
Her 2 exhibits, APB exhibits 1 and 2, will be entered as exhibit number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Powell Baker, please answer any questions that counsel for the consumer advocate or the commissioners may have for you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hall, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Baker, your testimony discusses the town hall presentations that the company held for its customers, correct?
That is correct.
I'm going to try to share my screen again, so bear with me. Let's see if I can put this up. Okay, I think you should be able to see that. And this, your testimony also mentioned a PowerPoint presentation that was given at that at the town halls, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And did you give that presentation?
I was a part of the presentation along with Brian Stone, Chief Operating Officer, and Mark Dade, President.
Okay. I noted that the presentation is titled Allowable Ex Parte Briefing. I understand that the company did give a briefing to the commission at some point. Did you all give the same presentation to your customers that you gave to the commission?
That was actually a little bit different.
That's fine. I'm going to move to page 6. Page 6 of the presentation. Let's try to expand it a little bit so everybody can see it. So this shows a comparison of PUI's rates to other neighboring wastewater companies in the area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And presumably it's to show that your rates right now aren't that bad compared to neighboring facilities, correct?
That is correct. Actually, this comparison was created by Mark Dade.
Okay. Well, I can ask Mr. Dade about it as well. I think if you're not comfortable answering my questions, just let me know and I can ask Mr. Dade.
I'd like to defer that to Mr. Dade.
Okay, that's fine. Let me see if I have any other questions for you then. Give me just a second. Okay, this might be one for Mr. Dade as well. Are you familiar with this slide from the presentation?
I am not familiar with that slide.
Okay, I will save that for Mr. Dade as well, and that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, hearing none. Let's see, we did have a little exchange, so is any redirect, Mr. Hafer?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Powell Baker, thank you for being here today, and you may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This is Roger Hall. Before Mr. Dade, there was an issue I probably should have raised at the beginning of the hearing. I would like to mention it now about moving in an additional exhibit. It's would be pursuant to South Carolina Rule of Evidence 106, which allows for complete documents to be submitted. In Mr. Walker's testimony, there's a copy of the asset purchase agreement that PY entered with the City of Columbia. That document does not include all the exhibits that are from the asset purchase agreement. I would like to move in, if Mr. Hafer does not object, Exhibit J and Schedule 3.1, I believe it's F, as an exhibit.
Mr. Hafer?
Do you have a copy of that you can share with us to show us what you're moving in?
I do, and I would email it to you. I might be able to reduce it to 15 megabytes. I'm not sure. And for disclosure, the copy that I'm going to share is from the PSC DMS site.
Is it an exhibit in the 2012 docket matter?
Yes, it does not appear to be stamped, but it is an exhibit from the 2012 matter.
I don't object, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me?
The applicant does not object.
You're not objecting?
Oh.
Okay. Mr. Hafer does not object. So,
If he could identify that one more time for us.
yeah, if you will identify that one more time, Mr. Hall.
Sure. If it's okay, Mr. Hafer hasn't objected, I'll share the screen quickly so that you can see it as well. I don't have the docket number, but I believe Mr. Hafer does know that. So it's Exhibit J to the asset purchase agreement. And Mr. Hafer, do you know, is the schedule, I could not determine if the schedule is part of Exhibit J. I know it's referenced, it's part of the asset purchase agreement. I'm just not 100% certain if it's actually part of Exhibit J.
Chairman, I would like to state through the chair, I don't know what exactly Mr. Hall can me to do, but if he is asking to enter into evidence exhibits to the asset purchase agreement which were filed with the commission and I'm going to pull up the docket number if you bear with me 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Order number, docket number 2012-273-S. If that's what you're asking, I don't object to the exhibits to the extent that they are exhibits to that document filed in that docket.
You sort of faded out in the middle of that, Mr. Hafer. Would you say that docket number again?
Docket number is 2012-273-S.
Okay. Mr. Butler.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, are we just talking about Exhibit J to that asset purchase agreement, or are we talking about all of the exhibits to the agreement in that docket? Got a little confused with what Mr.
So-
Hall was asking, actually.
Yeah, and that is definitely my fault. So I believe Exhibit J includes everything that I'd like to put in. If not, there's what's referred to at the top as Schedule 3.1F. If that is not part of Exhibit J, I would like that included as well.
Not sure about that. Mr. Hafer?
Mr. Chairman, again, I will simply say that to the extent that the document is part of the docket file in that 2012 docket, we don't object, but I can't say whether it is or isn't at this point.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a suggestion? May we hold this request in abeyance until later on in the proceeding, and then give Mr. Hafer a chance to look at that document and maybe confer with Mr. Hall, and then they can come back to us once it's decided what will be requested to be entered into the evidence, if that's agreeable with the chairman.
It's okay with me. Is Mr. Hafer and Mr. Hall, does that work for you?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, give us 1 second, and we're...
Hey, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Commissioner Belser has a document here from docket number 2012-273S. I see an Exhibit J, and then I see a Schedule 3.1 and an F in parentheses. And is that, Mr. Hall, is that what you're wanting to put into the evidence?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Hafer, have you seen these documents? If not,
I have not, now.
Okay. Would you like okay, would you like a chance to do so as we had said?
Yes, I would like an opportunity to review them before we commit to letting them into the record.
All right, sir. Yeah, please do, and then whenever y'all are ready, just make it known to the chairman and we can rediscuss it. That's agreeable.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hafer, do I need to provide a copy to Mr. Hafer? Are you all able to send him?
If you
Probably
could,
that would be helpful, yes, sir.
Chair, if I might state through the chair.
Yes, sir.
It would be helpful if Mr. Hall would send me the documents. I'm looking on my own system. I don't see the exhibits he's referring to.
Okay, if we can do that,
I'm
Mr. Hall.
gonna do it. Yeah, it's 15 megabytes, so I'm not sure if it'll go through, but give me just a moment and I will try.
Okay, well, y'all do that and we'll come back to it. Figure out a way to get that done, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so I think we're, where we are now is, Mr. Hafer is to call Mr. Dade. Yeah, Mr. Hafer, we're losing you, losing your microphone feed. We're sort of skipping. We need to.
Hear me now?
Can you hear me? This is Mark Dade.
Mr. Dade, we can hear you fine. It's Mr. Hafer we're having a hard time with.
Can you hear me now, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes, that's much better. Okay, Mr. Hafer, I've got to swear in Mr. Dade. Okay, Mr. Dade, if you'll please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you please state your full name and business address for the record?
Yes, it's Mark S. Dade, and my business address is 1710 Wood Creek Farms Road, Elgin, South Carolina, 29045.
Mr. Dade, where are you employed and in what capacity?
I am president of Palmetto Utilities as well as a number of other affiliate utilities. Technically, I work for Nye America Operating, which is our overhead company, where we have most of our overhead, and we allocate that to each of the companies that we manage and own.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in this case testimony, direct testimony consisting of 12 pages?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any additions, deletions, corrections, or revisions to that pre-filed testimony?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the questions in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers today from the stand be the same as printed therein?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would move Mr. Dade's direct testimony into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Mr. Dade's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Mr. Dade, did you cause to be attached 4 exhibits totaling 25 pages to your direct pre-filed testimony?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would move Mr. Dade's 4 exhibits totaling 25 pages as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Dade's 4 exhibits, MD 1 through 4, will be entered as exhibit number 5. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as directed by the hearing officer, I'm going to proceed to also seek to enter into the evidence in this case, Mr. Dade's rebuttal testimony, his limited additional testimony, and his responsive testimony. Mr. Dade, did you cause to be pre-filed rebuttal testimony consisting of 28 pages?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, revisions, corrections, or deletions from your rebuttal testimony?
Yes, I have a few.
If you would, please give those to the court reporter slowly.
Okay. On page 2, lines 1 through 2, please delete the clause at the end of the sentence beginning with some, so that the last word in the sentence will be positions. Also on page 2, line 18 through 20, please delete the sentence starting with this and ending with charge. On page 7, line 22, please delete that entire line. On page 8, lines 1 through 6, delete those lines. On page 8, line 7, please delete the phrase beginning with the word those and ending with the word regard, including the hyphen. On page 10, lines 22 through 23, please delete the line beginning with the word this on line 22 through the end of line 23. On page 26, lines 3 through 22, please delete all those lines. Please delete page 27 in its entirety. Page 28, lines 1 through 2, delete these lines. That's the end of the changes.
If I were to ask you the questions printed in your testimony with those revisions, would your answers on the stand today be the same as printed therein?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would move Mr. Dade's rebuttal testimony with the changes that he has just described into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Mr. Dade's rebuttal pre-file testimony with the changes that he just indicated will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dade, did you also cause to be pre-filed with your rebuttal testimony 8 exhibits totaling 34 pages?
Yes, I did.
Chairman, I would move Mr. Dade's 8 rebuttal exhibits totaling 34 pages into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Dade's 8 rebuttal exhibits, MD rebuttal exhibits 1 through 8 will be entered as exhibit number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dade, did you also cause to be pre-filed in this matter limited additional testimony consisting of 3 pages?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, revisions, corrections, or deletions to that testimony?
No.
If I were to ask you the questions printed in that limited additional testimony that's been pre-filed, would your answers be the same as contained therein?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would move Mr. Dade's limited additional testimony into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Thank you, Mr. Dade's limited additional testimony will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dade, did you also cause to be pre-filed responsive testimony consisting of 12 pages?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, deletions, corrections, or revisions to that testimony?
No.
If I were to ask you the questions in your pre-filed responsive testimony, would your answers from the stand be the same as printed therein?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Chairman, I would move Mr. Dade's responsive testimony of 12 pages into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Mr. Dade's pre-file responsive testimony will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Mr. Dade, please answer any questions counsel for the consumer advocate or the commissioners may have for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, maybe this is for Mr. Hafer. Were Mr. Dade's corrections the same that are included in the stipulation? There was a lot of corrections there. I was not able to follow them all. But I have the stipulation in front of me. I see that at least the first 3 are the same.
I believe you said that was a question for Mr. Hafer?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, would you like for me to answer that question?
Certainly.
Responding through the chair, yes, they are the same as what's in the stipulations.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hafer.
Thank you. Just wanted to give the caveat in case I ask him about testimony that has now been stricken since it was quite difficult to keep up.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Mr. Dade, how are you doing this afternoon?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm going to share. I was going to ask Ms. Powell Baker about the presentation I was given at the town hall, and she deferred some of the questions to you. So I'm going to try to share my screen again. And can you see that?
Yes.
So I was asking Ms. Baker that presumably this list was shown to the consumers to show that Palmetto utilities rates are not as high as neighboring facilities or neighboring utilities in the area. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
This is John Hafer,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hall has identified a document that was provided to the commission in the allowable ex parte briefing, and I don't think there's been any testimony that this document is the same as what was provided at the town hall meeting. In fact, I think Ms. Powell said the opposite. So I wanted to make that distinction on the record.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll ask Mr. Dade the same thing. I believe Ms. Powell answered. So, Mr. Dade, the title of the presentation that is from APB Exhibit 2 of Ms. Powell Baker's testimony is allowable ex parte briefing. Is this the same presentation that was given to the commission?
Yes.
So this is page 6 of the presentation. Again, it appears to be a list of rates in the Columbia area, a list of wastewater rates in Columbia area, correct?
Yes, neighboring, our closest neighbors to our systems.
Okay. And here we can see that Palmetto Utilities at the current rates is a lot less than some of the other utilities, correct?
Yeah, I might add, though, that what we showed to the public in the voluntary town hall meetings was an updated chart that had the most latest information. So some of the numbers in my MD Exhibit 1 are a little bit different than these.
Okay, I guess I'm confused. So was this a presentation that was this slide was not shown at the town hall?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, it's
an updated slide was.
I see. Well, I've got this one up, so let's talk about this one.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Okay, thank you. I do recall reading that testimony. Thank you. So all of these utilities have flat fee billing. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think 5 of them have volumetric billing.
And so some of these rates, some of these rates could be much lower. For example, the customers were using less than 6,000 gallons per month.
That's correct.
These
are average rates.
Average based on 6,000 gallons per month, correct?
That's right.
And so in the first 2 entities, which are known to have the highest rates, they do not have flat fee billing, it appears, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It also appears that 4 of the utilities above that with higher rates than PUI, you all listed out-of-city rates. Is that correct?
I think the only out-of-city rate technically is the City of Columbia one in line number 2, which would be our customers that we acquired from the City of Columbia. That's what they would be paying since they're out-of-city rate. I don't know that the others have in-city or out-of-city rates offhand.
But you see the footnote number 2 beside Town of Winsboro says out-of-city rate.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
And next to Town of Lexington.
So Carolina Water, I guess, would not.
So Town of Lexington, that's the out-of-city rate, correct?
Yeah.
City of Casey, so number 2 next to it, out-of-city rate.
You're correct.
And presumably their in-city rates would be lower. I believe you just said that.
Usually that's the case, yes.
And the City of Columbia is the only one that listed the in-city rates that's down there 2 below Palmetto Utilities, correct?
Yes.
Do you know why?
People are familiar with the City of Columbia.
Do you know why you all didn't include the in-city rates for the Town of Winsboro, for the Town of Lexington, for the City of Casey?
Well, our customers that we acquire from the City of Columbia paid out-of-city rates. So that's kind of what you would compare them to, since that's what they generally, always pay.
Did any of the consumers at the town hall meeting comment on that?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of them were used to seeing or had heard of the City of Columbia in-city rates, which they would not pay. And so I think a lot of them, though, really said but I don't use 6,000 gallons. And I believe one of them who spoke to us thought she used way less than 6,000 gallons. Stretching my memory here, it was close to 6,000 gallons. And what I try to tell people is that this is an average 6,000. You can't put everybody up there, but many companies use 6,000 as a benchmark. And our customers that we got from the City of Columbia, our last meter readings show that they use 6,107 gallons on average. So we just tried to throw that up there to give them a perspective without having to put, obviously, millions of pieces of data up there. Yes, if you're a lower use customer, you obviously would pay less. And if you were a higher use customer, you would pay more.
And if you're in the city, you would pay less as well for those
Yes.
utilities.
Yes.
And so given if I believe Palmetto initially requested a $66 rate, is that right? 66 and some change?
66.62, yes.
Correct. So in that case, you all would be the fourth highest on this list, correct?
Well, but I think you have to note on this chart, well, this chart doesn't have it. The one that's in my MD Exhibit 1 has the 3-year program where we offered originally to phase in those rates. So in year 1, it would be $56.94. It only gets to $66.62 in the 3rd year. So again, we tried to buffer things out here a little bit because, we recognize it's a hardship on our customers. So we tried to, layer it in and offer that in our application.
Sure. Okay. All right. I'm going to move to another slide in this presentation. Ms. Powell-Baker was not familiar with this slide from the presentation. Are you?
Yes, I am, but I'm only seeing, okay, there we go. Perfect.
So you are familiar with it?
I am.
Okay. The CIAC, or Contributions in Aid of Construction, that's listed there, that is, I see below in green, for 12 lift stations identified as the property donated by developers. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that does not include any sewer lines associated with the lift stations, correct?
There's some around them, but no, this is the donated lift stations.
And the sewer lines are typically connected to lift stations, correct?
Yes, and I think this includes small sections that were immediately adjacent to the lift station itself. I'm talking small amount of feet. Do developers typically donate all of the sewer lines in their neighborhoods? If they're going to donate lift stations, would they typically also donate sewer lines? They may or may not. It really depends. I've seen it a number of different ways.
Where developers maintain ownership of sewer lines after donating lift stations?
No, where they wouldn't have built them.
They wouldn't have built them, but if they were there, they would donate them, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen. Give me just a minute, please.
Okay.
So in your testimony, you discussed how Mr. Wood and Mr. Clayton valued the assets purchased from the city, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to show you page 7 of your testimony.
Let me get it.
Sure, I'm trying to share the screen here. Hopefully you can see that as well. But
yeah, I have it here, so it might be easier. 9 and 10, you say?
Yes. Or page 7, yes, sir, lines 9 through 11.
Yeah, I got it.
So we're just talking about the lift stations, and here you say the donated lift stations were listed in the asset purchase agreement with the city, and they're, I always get this wrong, but they're, I forgot the R, the cost not including depreciation. Reproduction, yeah, replacement and reproduction, I always get those confused, thank you. So the reproduction cost So it was calculated similar to the way the $18 million was calculated using Witness Wood's report, correct?
Yes.
I want to ask you about the asset purchase agreement. Actually, preliminarily had an issue with a new exhibit, and I'm not sure if I can talk about it at this point. Mr. Chairman, is it proper for me to discuss the exhibits we previously moved to enter while we wait for Mr. Hafer's review?
I'm gonna let Mr. Butler answer that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what does Mr. Hafer think about that?
Mr. Chairman, I would object. I think the procedure was laid out. If you wanted to ask a witness about a document that's not in the record, you were required to pre-file it with the commission in an envelope, and then be in a position to share it so we can look at it. And that's obviously not the case today, so I would object.
And I would say, Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, this document was not one that I had anticipated including before this weekend, before Sunday evening. At this point, and I did not see how that was possible. I will again submit that it is part of a previous commission docket. Two, it is the remainder of an exhibit that is already presumably will be put up by PUI. Therefore, I believe under South Carolina Rule of Evidence 106, the complete document should be allowed. I can also attempt to establish a basis for it with Mr. Dade, but I do believe, regardless of that, it should be allowable under South Carolina Rule of Evidence 106.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'd have to sustain Mr. Hafer's objection based on the grounds that he stated.
Okay, thank you.
May I try to establish a foundation for the exhibit?
Well, are you asking for proffer?
Yes, I believe it's relevant.
Well, in order to proffer, okay, you have to furnish a copy of the document under our rule. So.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dye, we'll continue.
Mr.
So,
Chairman,
again,
I'm having a little trouble hearing Mr. Butler.
Okay, Mr. Hafer, can you hear me now, sir?
That wasn't me, Dr. Butler. I don't know who said that, but it wasn't me.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Oh, sorry. Commissioner, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you now, David, yes.
Okay, perhaps I wasn't close enough. Sorry.
Okay, let's proceed.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that, Mr. Dade. So again, lines 9 through here, you state the donated lift stations were listed in the asset purchase agreement with the city. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you reviewed the full asset purchase agreement?
I've read it in the past, yes.
Okay. And did that document, I presume, according to your testimony, contained a list of lift stations that were donated to the city?
Yes.
Do you recall if the asset purchase agreement included any other donations?
No, I don't believe it did.
Okay. Did it include any other easements?
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I think this was what noted as donated.
Do you recall, the city, clearly, obviously, you're buying these assets, so they transferred them to PUI. Did they include deeds in the asset purchase agreement?
Yes, I think there were some deeds related to these lift stations in the asset purchase agreement.
Okay. And do you recall if those deeds, did they have any drawings, any parcel descriptions, anything to show what the property was?
Yes, I think most of them did, and they had sort of surveys or a subset of the survey, and it had in most of them the amount of acreage that came with the lift station.
And did those surveys, for example, if it was a subdivision, did the survey include parcels in the subdivision to your knowledge?
No, just the lift station.
Just the lift stations. You don't recall whether the surveys included and showed actual subdivisions or not?
No, they didn't. You mean with a bunch of where the houses go and stuff, the entire plan? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it
Yes.
just showed the lift station area.
Okay.
Again, sorry, it's just 5 or 6 years ago since the last time I looked at it, but
Sure. And the asset purchase agreement, were you involved with the PY's rate or case in 2012, 2013 when they requested to purchase the city system?
I was involved in the putting some numbers together on estimated costs of operation and things like that. I was not involved in the negotiation of the asset purchase agreement.
But you were employed at the time?
Yes. That was a predecessor company to Milliken, who we did that deal back in 2013.
Do you recall if the deeds that we were just talking about, were they included with Palmetto's application in 2012?
I don't remember. They were part of the asset purchase agreement, which was part of the application to the Public Service Commission. So I would guess they would have been. We can check.
Okay. You don't happen to recall how much money the city or how much money the developers charged or how much the developers charged the city, do you? For donating lift stations? Did the city, do you know what the city paid the developers?
No, as we mentioned in my testimony and others, the records from the city were almost completely non-existent. What we did to determine this amount, as in my testimony, was using the same methods that Joel Wood and Don Clayton did for their reproduction costs, new, less depreciation. You use the same method to value them and then discount them back and then calculate the accumulated depreciation. But there was nothing there. If you recall, or may not know, I mean, this wasn't like buying a company where you have financial statements. These were buying basically customers. So they didn't keep data by just this subset of assets and customers, as I understand.
But there were some deeds and some surveys to your recollection, correct?
Yeah, whatever was attached to the asset purchase agreement.
Sure. Okay. I'll ask Mr. Wood and Mr. Clayton more about their evaluation. Thank you. Scott, one more set of questions for you. I want to ask you about. Sure.
They did the valuation of those items. I was the one who took them and then combined them and discounted them to come up with the same the $900,000. So they did the original assets and then I put them separately.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So next, I want to ask you about the interruption of service and the limitation of liability issue. This is, as discussed earlier, it's an issue that PUI has agreed to withdraw. I do appreciate that, but since we are having this hearing, I wanted to ask you about it. I'm going to try to share my screen one more time. So these are excerpts from the application. So again here, as you can see, it's asked for authority for the limits liability in circumstances involving interruption or failure to provide service to remedies available under the commission regulations, correct?
Yes.
And then just continuing on page 7, it's, the applicant proposes that be permitted to limit its liability and that of its agents, employees, customers for damages arising out of the interruption of service or the failure to furnish service to the remedies under South Carolina Code Reg 03-517, correct?
Yeah, what page is that, please?
I'm sorry, it's on, page 7 of the amended application.
Oh, okay. I was looking at testimony. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
But that sounds familiar to you, correct?
Yes.
And I believe, there was a stipulation or an agreement before where the company acknowledged that 103-517 was the incorrect regulation citation, and that should actually be 103-514. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to show you section 514. I know it's a lot to read here, but can you tell me what liabilities for the company or remedies for the consumers are available in section 514?
I would probably have to look at it and study it, but, my understanding is that our request did not limit any customer from filing a lawsuit. It was really just a little bit of administrative work on our tariff that virtually all the other wastewater utilities have in. We were just sort of cleaning it.
Okay, so
But I
you are,
don't know that.
you are saying that customer would not be precluded from bringing a suit for damages resulted.
That's my understanding.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify because I was going to show you next here from your testimony. You do say that.
Okay.
But importantly, I think this is the language that was proposed. Can you see that?
Yeah, barely.
Okay. Let's see if I can.
Yeah, the limit of liability of utilities.
Not sure how to get it bigger. Let's see.
I got it. It's good. It's okay.
Okay. That section specifically mentions damages, correct?
Yeah.
See, it's the liability of the company for damages.
Okay.
So I guess at this point the company has stated that it's willing to withdraw this. If that changes, would you be willing to reword it at least so that it specifically notes that customers could bring a suit for damages?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Hafer.
I'm going to object. Mr. Hall's asking this witness to speculate about what the company might do in the future if the provision of the stipulation, which very clearly withdraws this language, is not approved. And the witness is not competent to testify what the company might do with respect to language in the future.
I'll withdraw the question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And just to confirm, I know you've said, but just to confirm that is your understanding that the language is not meant to apply to damages that result from interruptions to service, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Give me just a second, please. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hall. Let's see, before we continue on with commissioner questions, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back at 3:30. So we will recess until 3:30. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think we still have Mr. Dade on the stand, and I think it's time for commissioner questions. So I'll turn it over to commissioners. Any questions of Mr. Dade?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Irvin.
Commissioner Irvin.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dade, how are you, sir? Mr. Dade, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I was talking to my mute button. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm fine. As I understand it, Palmetto Utilities purchased the PRC system assets from the City of Columbia in March of 2013. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thereabout. And
Yes.
the purchase price was $18 million.
Yes.
Now, after the purchase, your company then contracted with the tangible group to conduct an original cost less depreciation study of the assets. Is that correct?
Well, it was a reproduction cost new, less depreciation, and two groups who are both represented here as witnesses worked on that project, Tangible and Joel Wood and Associates.
All right, sir. And their assessment was, their assignment, I suppose, was to conduct a study and come up with the asset valuation as of February 28, 2013. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm curious, why did Palmetto Utilities conduct the valuation study after the fact? In other words, after the assets were purchased rather than before they were purchased?
Well, I think it was done at the same time. Excuse me one second. I think I have the report here. Yeah, the report from Tangible was dated in February of 2013, before the sale closed, and I think the Joel Wood study, you can ask him, but it was a few months before that.
All right, so that's what I was confused about, because in order for you to have an understanding of what you're buying, you'd want the depreciation. I mean, you'd want the study done prior to the purchase, correct?
Yes.
And is that in fact what happened?
Yeah, we had it done just about before, just shortly before the closing. Frankly, the valuation in terms of what we paid the city was also based on EBITDA, which we calculated and obviously did not get from the City of Columbia.
Could you explain what EBITDA stands for, what that means?
Sure. It's a short name for it would be cash flow, but it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So it's really your cash flow from operations before you do any financing.
All right.
Before that expenditure. It's a common way of valuing many companies, but especially water and wastewater companies.
Yes, sir. Is that a reasonably prudent way to value of the asset?
Yeah, well, as you may know, that there's many ways to value assets. The cost of capital experts can go through the different methods, but yeah, relative multiple of EBITDA is a common way and a prudent way of valuing the assets.
All right, sir. And so you actually used the EBITDA method and a separate study. So you had two valuations. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the asset valuation study was more of a check.
Okay. Well, what about the EBITDA study? Did it come up with a different number, or were they both exactly the same?
You know, they were in the same range. I think it's a ways back now, but you know, you start with your number and then you negotiate and you try to get a better number, and sometimes you pay more than you would like. I think these assets were purchased at a very competitive rate.
All right, sir. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Belser.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hamilton.
Hang on. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dade, happy to have you with us today, sir.
Good to see you.
Sir, Mr. Dade, let me talk to you a minute about the difference between municipalities' costs of aid in construction and that of a utility. Isn't there a difference?
Yes, there is. Go ahead.
Okay, if there is, when you went forward with the contract for purchase from the City of Columbia, how did you rectify the differences between the two units?
We maintained the rates that were in place as part of the agreement with the Public Service Commission when we bought that we would keep the same rates and CIC and the like in place.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Belser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Dade. Thank you for being here to testify today. I'm going to kind of skip around, and so if you would, I want to ask you about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Did Palmetto Utilities create a regulatory liability for the excess taxes that it had collected since the implementation of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in January 2018?
Yeah, we created a liability. We were involved in another docket, as you may recall, regarding specifically just the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. So what we did is created another liability on our general ledger and accumulated funds there and calculated what the liability would be under different methods, what was given out at the CUC case, the way we believed it should be, and something that came from the ORS. So we had a liability. It wasn't called a regulatory liability for tax cuts, but it was a liability on the balance sheet.
And the reason I was asking, in that docket, all utilities were directed to create some sort of accounting for the excess. Was that correct? And that's what y'all attempted to do, as the way I take your answer.
Yes, and in my rebuttal testimony is the schedule of what we believe the calculation should be.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Let's see. In your I think it's in your direct, well, it may be your rebuttal. It's in your rebuttal testimony regarding meters or getting consumption data from the City of Columbia. And I think I have a note for page 19 of your rebuttal. You've indicated that based on correspondence with the City of Columbia, Columbia's meter replacement program is scheduled to be completed in 2021. Is that correct?
Yes, I had a recent call with the City of Columbia. Now they're saying 2022.
Okay. And under the stipulations offered by Palmetto and the ORS, rates reflecting rates based on water usage could not be implemented until August of 2023. Is that a correct reading of that?
No, I think what we said is we would stay out from a base rate increase until then.
Well, if Palmetto Utilities is able to get water consumption data prior to that, would they be able to implement a different rate schedule based on water consumption prior to another base rate case?
We would consider that. I think a couple things have to occur. The revenue requirement, obviously, in this case would have to be the same, plus what I think I quote in my presentation or my testimony is 168,000. The additional costs we're estimating per meter reads. And I think the cost of service study would have to be done as well, which, you know, there are some issues with that. I think Mr. Walsh can talk about those as well, but a cost of service study would have to be done.
My concern is, do the stipulations preclude the utility from, should the water consumption billing information from the City of Columbia become available? Should a cost of service study be completed? Will the stipulations preclude the utility from moving forward to ask for consumption-based rates if that occurs before August of 2023?
Yeah, I don't think the stipulation precludes that.
When Palmetto needs to attract capital, does Palmetto go to the market or go to get capital in its own name, or is that something that it's one of its parents, somewhere in the line going up, gets capital, how does Palmetto get debt financing? Is it in their name?
Yeah, debt financing. Yeah, debt financing we have through a facility right now with Bank of America. And what it does is it's at the level one above the utilities, so that it takes all of the utilities we own and puts them in the collateral pool. That allows us to be bigger and get a better rate. Okay. So it's really just all the utilities. So Palmetto, PWR, which is another utility, as you know, in South Carolina, and our utility in Florida, which is quite small, but is added in.
Are you able to speak to the stipulation agreement?
Yeah, I think to some degree I can, yeah.
Well, I reckon my overarching question is, why would approval of these stipulations be in the public interest? And I know that that's a determination this commission has to make, but I mean, I would hope that the utility has a position on that.
Well, you know, I think the customers get a number of things that they didn't have in our application. You know, they get a stay out. They get $150,000 over 3 years donated to a nonprofit to help customers pay their bills, you know, in these difficult times. We're also agreeing to about 53% of our ask of $5.933 million, which we believe is bona fide and would support and have supported with testimony. But, you know, the customers are getting quite a discount on that. So I would say it's reasonable, and it's definitely in the public interest.
And let's talk about under the. Do you have a copy of the stipulations with you that you can refer to?
Yes.
Okay. With regard to the PRC assets discussed in paragraph 3. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. And to some degree, I think paragraphs 1 and 2 play into that. Valuing the PRC assets at $8.476 million. That will be a hard number, am I correct? The utility will not come back in and seek to have additional rate base added for anything above that, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's it. That's the number.
And then at the end of paragraph 3, will be a regulatory asset amortized over 9.31 years with an annual amortization of $910,000, and the company will be allowed a return at the weighted average cost of capital. And based on the documents of the stipulation, that weighted average cost of capital is 7.63%. Does that sound right?
Yes.
And you knew I was going to come back to you with these, but because I've asked 2 other people about this, and they keep pushing it off to you. But the capital improvements, other than PRC, capital improvements that the company has made since the last rate case, in which the company is asking for inclusion here, and I believe there are 4 major items. Where are there specific amounts associated with those capital expenditures? Either in testimony or...
They are in,
okay.
Yeah, they're in total form in our application, so you don't give the line by line CapEx normally in a application. You give the total. However, I have that list. It was given to the Office of Regulatory Staff. It was part of their audit. They looked it over, I'm assuming, and I'm sure, and actually inspected the assets physically, and they found them to be prudent and in service, used, and useful.
Can you give me those amounts? And I'll tell you, I don't mean to be argumentative about this, and I know what the regulation says about what's required to be in the application, but when we come into a hearing and a company's asking for an amount, I really want specifics on what goes where. I get a little, and this isn't just Palmetto, Mr. Dade. I'm not trying to pick on y'all. I'm just trying to explain my position. I get a little frustrated when it's just, well, approximately this or about that, and I can't pick it apart. I like details, so I'd appreciate it if you could give me those amounts.
Yeah, I have them right in front of me.
Okay.
There's a lot, but the major ones were as follows. We spent $337,000 on an anoxic basin baffle that made the plant more efficient. We spent
and where is that?
$384,000.
Where is that baffle?
That's at the Spears.
Okay.
That's at the Spears Creek plant.
Okay.
We had some hard scrabble road relocation of our line because of a widening of the road. That was $800-some thousand. Now we're going to get much of that back via from the State Department of Transport. The GIS mapping system that Brian Stone mentioned earlier was $239,000. That's a very impressive system that allows us to locate manholes and customer outages to which manhole and which system. It's a really cool system. We had a gravity line redirect at Winslow Gravity of $882,000. Again, there's a pretty long list here. I'm not sure how far you want me to go. I mean, I obviously could provide it, and I guess listening to what you just said, I think in our next application, we will provide, not 100 lists of capital items, but maybe the top 20. We do a lot of underground replacement, meaning we try every year to do about 10% of our system. So we go in there with a vac truck and a sprayer and a root cleaner, and we inspect it, and then if we have to replace part of the pipeline, we do that. So that's a very large amount, of, a couple $1 million at least.
Well, I
and
tell
that's
you,
done every year.
I usually try to avoid late filed exhibits, but would you maybe over the evening discuss, what if we leave a late filed exhibit? You can discuss it with Mr. Hafer and see if that is an exhibit that y'all would submit for a late filed exhibit that kind of lists all of those. I would appreciate being able to see that. And if there is something on there that for some reason doesn't need to be made public, he can let us know tomorrow. Would that be fair enough?
Yeah, I don't see anything that shouldn't be, but yes, of course.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, may I ask for a late filed exhibit for this? And you said it was in response to a ORS request. Is that correct?
I just checked with my office. I believe we did give it to them. They customarily do check most of all the capital expenditures we spend to make sure it's there and it's in service. They're pretty thorough, I must say.
Could we hold a late filed exhibit subject to right now, if we could just hold a number.
We'll mark that for number 7.
Just as for identification at this point. And then if after Mr. Dade and Mr. Hafer can consult, we can see whether or not it can come in tomorrow, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. I won't make you go through the rest of it. We'll wait on that, Mr. Dade. How about that?
Okay.
And I think that can, let me make sure. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Dade. Appreciate your testimony. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howard.
Commissioner Howard. Mr. Dade, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Dade, I got a couple questions on the current pandemic and COVID-19. I assume, am I correct in did y'all do a deferment on payment?
Yes, we've stopped all late fees and disconnection fees and everything like that. Yes.
But they still made payments. You just deferred disconnection fees
and late payment fees.
Did that do anything? That didn't hurt your cash flow much, did it?
It's down some. The last I think we looked was 4%, but not quite as much as we thought. Our over 90 days accounts receivable is growing.
I guess my question will lead up to what percentage of your customers took advantage of your deferment payment plans in some form or another?
Well, again, this is just customers who were scheduled to be shut off, who hadn't paid. So it wasn't like we offered them to just defer their regular payments. We have always had a deferred payment plan if you can't pay your bill, even before COVID-19. And I'm going to guess and say probably 5 to 8% of people normally were on that program. It's at some point they usually get paid off in less than 6 months, sometimes longer.
When do you plan on going back to business as usual on that plan?
Well, I think we've been having calls with the ORS almost every week with all the utilities, which I must say were very good and helpful. We were going to start going back to shutting people off in August 1st, but given the recent resurgence, call it, we've postponed that indefinitely.
Let's go on another subject. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of studies, I guess seminars on utilization of wastewater to determine whether there are some viruses, such as COVID-19, in that particular service area and to the extent. Do y'all do that study?
Unfortunately, I'd like to defer that. If we could get it from Brian Stone, maybe we could provide it. He's the operations head guy, and I just don't know.
Yeah, I'll talk to Mr. Stone. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Commissioners, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Dade.
Good afternoon.
Got just a couple of questions for you. Most of mine have already been asked, but I got one or two more for you here. And I hope I've got the volume adjusted on this to where you can hear me okay.
We can hear you fine.
Mr. Dade, records from the City of Columbia's bond issuance documents in its annual reports from 2005 to 2013, the year in which Palmetto Utilities purchased the PRC assets from the city, show that capital contributions to the city's water and sewer account total slightly more than $70 million. Do you know what percentage of those contributions were to the city's sewer system?
I do not. I know Mr. Walker may have that information in his testimony, or he's the expert on that subject.
The other, not Mr. Ralph Walker, but that we've heard from, but the other Mr. Walker we'll hear from later.
Mr. Harold Walker. I'm sorry.
Harold Walker. Okay, yes. Would that information, would you think that would be, I guess I'm asking you as the financial guy, would that information have been useful as Palmetto Utilities prepared to negotiate the purchase of the PRC assets from the City of Columbia?
Are you referring to their capital expenditure forecast, or their actual capital expenditures paid? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and I do think that Mr. Harold Walker discusses those documents in his rebuttal testimonies on page 3. So maybe if you'd like, I'll just pull that back for him.
I would just say that we did have a study done before we bought the system from IHG, a consulting firm here in Columbia, South Carolina, estimating what the capital expenditures would be for the underground, for the annual underground repairs and things like that.
Right. Well, I'll when we get the opportunity, we'll visit that with Mr. Harold Walker. Mr. Dade, also, I think this came up possibly maybe in a question from Commissioner Hamilton or Commissioner Belzer, but maybe not. But you state on page 19 of your rebuttal testimony that to get the consumption information from the City of Columbia would result in an annual charge of about $168,000. Do you plan on inquiring about water consumption data from the city once the meter replacements are complete in 2021?
Yeah, we have a term sheet from them, which is good for 2 years. So I think we're locked down. If we sign it, we would be locked down for that time period at 50 cents per meter read per month, which is the 168,000.
Well, you did have an exchange with Commissioner Belzer and I think you were primarily talking about the cost of service study in one of your answers to her, but would you anticipate the cost of acquiring data to be significantly less once those smart readers are installed?
No, this number is for the smart meters.
That number is okay.
Yeah.
And I guess lastly, Commissioner Belser had some questions for you about your limited additional testimony on page 2, and y'all discussed what assets were in the $8.4 million related to the PRC and some other adjustments. But I would follow up, has ORS reviewed the additional rate case expenses you proposed in your revenue requirement, to your knowledge?
My understanding is they have. We've submitted them. We have more expenses than are listed in that stipulation, but we're going to eat them. We committed to that number.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Dottie. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Belser.
Mr. Dade, if I could follow up on that last answer, can you quantify that amount that the company is foregoing on expenses based on the stipulations?
I'll put a real low number in for Mr. Hafer, but it's probably somewhere around $20,000.
Thank you very much.
Maybe a little. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howard.
Here. Mr. Dottie, I think you said Brian Stone was the one that would answer my question on analysis of wastewater?
Yes.
And he's already testified. Did anyone else could get that information that hadn't testified yet?
I can ask you. I don't know how it works with. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Hafer. May I
Yes, sir.
make
Mr.
a
Hafer.
point?
Yes, sir.
I believe Mr. Stone is still here, and we could bring him back to answer Commissioner Howard's question.
Thank you, Mr. Hafer. I'm curious. I appreciate it.
If the chair will indulge me, if you'll give me a minute, I'll go in the room next door to see if he's still here.
Okay.
I think he is.
Okay, we'll do that, and we'll get Commissioner Howard's question answered. So go right ahead,
Be
Mr.
right back.
Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Commissioner Howard.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Hafer.
He is still here, and we can bring him back on the witness stand.
Okay, well, let's do that. Do we need to re-swear him? He's already been, okay. Yes, so we can put him on.
I had a couple of questions on redirect before we put Mr.
Okay, let's
Stone
go
back
ahead
on.
let's go ahead and do that. And let's do your redirect, and then we'll put Mr. Stone up to get Commissioner Howard's question.
Thank you. Mr. Dade, are you still with us?
Yes.
You recall Mr. Hall asked you some questions about the list of neighboring wastewater rates that appears in the Ms. Powell Baker's exhibit number 2 on page 6. Do you recall him asking you about that?
Yes, I do.
And he asked you if the rate increase that you had requested, which is roughly $66.20, if that increase has been granted, or is granted, you would be the fourth highest. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
And since you made this presentation to the commission in September of this year, have the rates for Carolina Water Service changed?
Yes, you're right, they have.
Okay. Now, Mr. Hall also asked you a question regarding why you didn't include the in-city rates for others besides the City of Columbia.
Yes.
Do you have any customers who are located inside a city other than the City of Columbia?
Yeah, we have some customers that are in the town of Blythewood, I believe.
Does the town of Blythewood offer water service?
No.
Okay. Lastly, let me ask you about Mr. Hall's line of questioning. Is it your understanding that someone who resides in the City of Columbia pays City of Columbia property tax?
Yes.
Regarding Commissioner Belser's questions with respect to presenting to the Commission a alternative rate design for consumption-based rates, and I believe you testified that the stipulation did not preclude the company from doing that because the revenue agreed to under the stipulation would not be changed. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
So as long as the company is not collecting more revenue than what the stipulation provides, there wouldn't be a rate increase, would there?
No, there would not. I think you have to deal with the meter costs, but yes, that's correct.
And am I not correct that the company is willing to do the cost of service study and present that information to the Commission before the next rate case?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And I believe Commissioner Whitfield asked you a couple of questions about what the city might charge, and you quoted, or you stated that the term sheet the city offered their $168,000 annual cost. That's an estimate based on your number of customers with City of Columbia water meters. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it's 50 cents per meter read?
Per month, yes.
Per customer per month. If the company enters into an agreement with the City of Columbia for that service, do you intend to submit that agreement to the Commission for approval?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If Palmetto Utilities Incorporated enters into a contract with the City of Columbia to acquire the city's water meter data, does the company intend to submit that contract to the Commission for approval?
Yes, I think we have to, yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hafer. Any recross on those particular questions?
No, sir.
Did somebody?
I'm sorry, this is Roger Hall. I said no.
Okay, sorry about that. Mr. Hall. Okay, got you.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry about that. Commissioner Belser.
Mr. Dade, do you still have the stipulations in front of you?
Yes.
Please read stipulation number 10.
Yes, PUI will conduct a cost of service study to coincide with PUI's historic test year in its next base rate case.
So I believe you just answered that you could do your cost of service study before your next rate case, did you not?
Yeah, we've committed to do it for the next base rate case, but if circumstances present themselves that we all want to do it earlier, we'd be willing to do it earlier.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Mr. Dade? Mr. Dade, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here today, and you may step down. And Mr. Hafer, if we can bring Mr. Stone back on to get Commissioner Howard's question answered.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I believe Mr. Stone's available. He is in another room, so we may need to give him a moment to get situated.
All right, we got Mr. Stone. Okay, so Commissioner Howard, you out there.
Mr. Stone, do you understand the question I asked? Do you know what we're talking about?
Why don't you restate that, Commissioner Howard?
Mr. Stone, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of seminars on utilization of wastewater to determine the amount of bacteria or viruses present in a system, to determine maybe some warning of possible pandemic effects. Does your company have the ability and the technology to determine the amount of viruses in wastewater as in that particular marketing area, service area? I think you're muted.
Yeah, let's get, yeah.
No.
Maybe we need to get Carlos to bring Mr. Stone's line back on.
Brian Stone's line now open.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
I'm sorry. So the answer is no, we don't have any such technology. My understanding is that some other wastewater companies or municipalities may be participating in such studies. I don't know that they have that technology. I believe they're partnering with possibly the university systems and other research type organizations to perform that testing, but we have no such program in place right now.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back, Mr. Stone. Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Okay, Mr. Hafer, I think we're ready for Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant we call Joel Wood.
Okay, we'll wait to get Mr. Wood up on the screen. There we go. Okay, Mr. Wood, welcome. We'll get you sworn in. If you'll raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you please state your full name and your business address for the record?
My name is Joel E. Wood. My business address is 2160 Filbert Highway, York, South Carolina, 29745.
Mr. Wood, where are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm the managing partner of Joel E. Wood and Associates.
And what is Joel E. Wood and Associates?
We're a civil engineering firm.
Are you a registered professional engineer in South Carolina?
Yes, I am.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in this case, testimony consisting of 3 pages?
Yes.
Do you have any changes, additions, deletions, or corrections to that testimony?
No, I do not.
if I were to ask you the questions in that testimony, would your answers on the stand be the same as printed therein?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Chairman, I would move Mr. Wood's pre-filed direct testimony be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Woods' pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Mr. Wood, did you have a single exhibit consisting of 46 pages to your testimony?
Yes, I did.
Chairman, I would move Mr. Wood's pre-filed direct testimony hearing exhibit as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Woods' pre-filed direct exhibit A will be entered as exhibit number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wood, would you answer any questions the counsel for the consumer advocate or the commissioners may have for you?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wood, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to try once again to share my screen. And this is from your page 3, lines 16 through 20 of your direct testimony. You state in the middle, it is your opinion within a reasonable degree of engineering certainty that the valuation of these facilities, and then the next part, replacement costs, new, less depreciation. Is it replacement costs or reproduction?
Replacement cost.
Okay.
That's the terminology that I use.
Okay. All right.
And reproduction cost, replacement cost, same thing.
Okay, yeah, I've explained earlier that always confused me, so I just wanted to clarify that. Now, and so it appears here, as of October 30th, 2012, $38,943,514 is for essentially the sewer lines, correct?
That's correct.
And then $1,581,654 is for the lift stations?
That's correct.
And the lift stations, are you aware that that's what the company considers was donated to the city?
I couldn't speak to that. I have no information whether they were built by the city or donated.
Okay. I'm going to show you part of your report here. This is page 22 of your report, or at least of your Exhibit A. Again, so see the reproduction cost, replacement cost, that's what confused me. It's very impressive, I'll say. This appears to me to be a breakdown by neighborhood of the sewer lines and manholes, lift stations, I assume are in there too, just not on the screen. Is that correct?
Well, it's if you look over, it says the as-built number.
Mm-hmm.
I did things by drainage basin, and the as-built number on the far left, like 21-02, was the component in that particular drainage basin that I named Ashley Hall Phase 2 or Phase 1 or whatever it was.
Okay, but Ashley Hall is a neighborhood, is a subdivision in the service territory that PUI acquired?
It could be. I'm not certain.
Okay, so Bradford. I'm just going to scroll kind of Bradford Park. I mean, they sound like neighborhoods, Brookside Village. So, but that's fair if you don't know. And so in the next column, you see descriptions. 8-inch PVC gravity line. Down further, we've got 4-inch, 6-inch. And you assign a dollar value to each of those, and you have a specific number of feet, correct?
That's correct.
And so where again did that information come from?
It came from as-built information provided by the City of Columbia.
The City of Columbia provided the as-builts.
That's correct. If you look on the far left-hand corner, it has the City of Columbia's as-built identification number.
I see. So, and is that the only information you used, the only drawings, documents that you used to do this?
I had a larger map that defined the service area, and it had designations of where the as-built were in relationship to that larger map.
Okay. And those as-built, they're for a given point in time, correct?
I don't know that I understand the question. The
Well, for
as-built
instance-
it's what it says. It's how the system was built. It defines
Right. So again,
and that sort of stuff.
sure. So like Ashley Hall, phase 1 through 5, there may be an as-built for, phase 1, phase 2. As they get built, these the drawings are created, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so, if you knew how many feet and types of lines were in the neighborhoods that were donated to the city at the time they were donated, could you do a similar evaluation?
I don't know that I understand that question.
Well, some other company witnesses have established that lift stations were donated to the city.
That was not part of my scope of services.
Did you hear that testimony earlier today?
No, I did not.
Okay. So, but again, I guess if you had a drawing that showed in detail the lines, you could do evaluation as you've done here, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I
If you had
object to call for speculation.
Mr. Hafer. Yes, sir.
Yes, I object to question calls for speculation.
I'll withdraw it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to be clear. The City of Columbia provided as-built drawings for every one of these numbers on the left is an as-built drawing the City of Columbia provided.
That is correct.
And those drawings showed sizes of sewer lines and number of manholes.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm just scrolling through. This appears to be 20 pages worth of evaluations that you did, and is that correct? Roughly 20 pages worth, probably?
Right. And so like on page 26, there's 15-inch PVC gravity interceptor. I have no idea. Interceptors are typically built by municipalities and not necessarily donated. I had an idea of how the city acquired the asset. I just know what the asset was.
Okay. Do the as-built, I assume they have a scale on, that's how you determine how many feet of a given type of pipe?
The as-bills are certified by the surveyors that did them at that time, and they have a footage and a slope on the sewer lines and the depth on the manholes and that sort of thing. It's certified by a surveyor that is seal affixed.
Okay. Do you remember the kind of the ranges of years on the as-bills? I mean,
No, sir, I do not.
Presumably they're from the time whenever the neighborhood was built.
2012 was a long time ago, and I don't remember any time frames that were on the as-bills.
Sure. No problem. Well, this one you probably won't remember then either. Do you recall when you were retained by PUI?
When I was in probably August to September of 2012.
Okay. And the plant value, I believe, if my notes are correct, was you valued it as of October 30th, 2012?
Let's say that again.
I believe your report says the valuation was done as of October 30th, 2012?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and so you think just a month before
That's
that
correct.
you were retained? Okay, so that's doesn't seem like something that takes a lot of time.
Oh, it takes a lot of time. It's a long, continuous process, it's something that you just can't start and walk away from and come back. You start and work on it for days at a time.
I see. Yeah, I understand. It's, again, it was impressive, the detail of the report. Give me just a second, please. Do you know if the sale was contingent on your valuation?
No, I do not.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Commissioners, questions? Mr. Wood.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of have a follow-up from Mr. Wood. I think Mr. Hall went down this road pretty good, and he also stated that Mr. Wood's report was pretty thorough and detailed. And in that regard, Mr. Wood, your exchange with Mr. Hall, you utilized a lot of as-built when you determined overhead and engineering fees and determining your reproduction value. In your professional opinion as an engineer, when a developer donates a plant to a utility, are the same overhead and engineering fees applied to the value the plant contributed?
I would have no way of answering that, sir. I do not know.
I just didn't know. I just didn't know, and maybe if you'd been retained as a consultant and in some other matter where a plant's been donated to a utility like this.
Are you asking do I design systems and that are donated to other municipalities? I don't know that I quite understand the question.
Have you been involved in the designing of, or have you evaluated other systems that, like you did in this case?
Yes, I have.
Any other professional knowledge in your years of experience that you could share with us related to this?
Well, if you refer to the report I gave in the methodology, I gave a long description of the methodology that's used. I've used it on other cases where there were acquisitions between private utilities and municipalities, where I've worked for the municipality and where I have worked for the private utility.
Well, I'm just trying to get my arms around the valuation of this. I mean, that's the whole gist of what's left in the case here.
Okay. Well, I have been in the engineering business, and we've designed utility systems that range anywhere from $5,000 to $34 million. I keep an accurate assessment of cost in North and South Carolina, where we typically work. I keep up with the unit costs that are, and they vary from time to time, from year to year, as gas shortages arise, as COVID-19 things come on, as the economy goes, prices change. But I keep a up-to-date file on what utilities which installed cost, and not only subdivisions, but for municipalities that use public right-of-ways. So I have an extensive knowledge, and I do extensive projections of what utilities and municipalities can expect to pay for utilities when finances are available maybe 2 years away. So that's how I make my living.
Let me refer back to your report if I can, Mr. Wood. on page 10 of your report, you outline three methods typically used to value an existing utility system. One, the reproduction cost less depreciation approach. Two, the income approach. And three, the comparable sales approach. Why was the income approach and comparable sales approach not included in your report?
That's not where my area of expertise is. And I wasn't charged with that task. The income approach is more of an accounting, and the comparable sales is more of an accounting and not necessarily a technical and engineering basis. And my expertise lies in reproduction costs and depreciation, not in income and that sort of thing.
Well, I was going to ask you how you thought these two approaches would have affected the valuation of the plant, but you've already testified that that's not your area of expertise. So I'll stop right there, and thank you, Mr. Wood, for your testimony and for your answers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitfield. Any other questions, commissioners? Not Mr. Hafer, any redirect?
No redirect, Mr. Chairman, and I would ask that Mr. Wood be excused. He does live in the Charlotte area.
Okay. Mr. Wood, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for your testimony, and you are excused.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we're running up on time. What I'd like to do, I think, Mr. Hafer, is if we can get Mr. Clayton sworn in and get his information entered into the record, and we'll play it by ear, but we're going to try to wrap it up by about 1:15.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant would call Donald J. Clayton.
Hello? Can you hear me, John?
Okay, Mr. Clayton.
Hello? I am trying to speak. And my mute button is off.
Okay. I don't know. He's on a different line than the other he's on the WebEx line. What do we need to do? Nothing. Can you hear me, Mr. Clayton?
I can, yes.
Okay, so we're good. We're good. If you can hear me. Mr. Clayton, if you will raise your right hand, we'll get you sworn in. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hafer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Donald J. Clayton. My business address is 201 King of Prussia Road, Suite 650, Radnor, Pennsylvania, 19087.
Mr. Clayton, where are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed at the Tangible Group, Inc., and I'm a principal with Tangible in charge of their management and rate consulting.
And are you a registered professional engineer?
Yes, I am, in Pennsylvania.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in this case direct testimony consisting of 8 typewritten pages?
Yes, I did.
If I were to ask you the questions in that pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be from the witness stand be the same as printed therein?
Yes, they would.
Do you have any additions, corrections, or deletions to that testimony?
No, I do not.
All right. Mr. Chairman, at this time I would move that Mr. Clayton's direct testimony be copied into the record as if given orally from the witness stand.
Mr. Clayton's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Mr. Clayton, did you also attach 3 exhibits totaling 40 pages to your testimony?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that Mr. Clayton's direct testimony exhibits be entered into evidence as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Clayton's exhibits DJC, exhibits 1 through 3 will be entered as exhibit number 9.
Mr. Clayton, did you also cause to be pre-filed in this case rebuttal testimony consisting of 4 pages?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any additions, corrections, or deletions?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the questions printed in your pre-filed rebuttal testimony, would your answers printed therein be the same from the witness stand?
Yes, they would.
Chairman, I would move that Mr. Clayton's rebuttal testimony be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Clayton's pre-filed rebuttal testimony will be entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clayton, please answer any questions that counsel for the consumer advocate or the commissioners may have for you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, go right ahead. We'll go with this for a few minutes.
All right, I'll try to be quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Clayton.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hall.
Did you hear my questions to Mr. Wood a few minutes ago?
Yes.
And are you aware that of the company's contention that there were 12 lift stations that were donated to the City of Columbia by developers?
Yes.
Okay. And so you've done a report for the company, and am I correct? You used Mr. Wood's reproduction cost study to determine the original cost of the sewer lines and lift stations.
It was, yes, it was an input to my study.
Okay. And like Mr. Wood, you also broke down the costs by subdivision or neighborhood, is that correct?
I used the categorizations that were in the Wood report, yes.
Okay, gotcha. I'm going to, once again, share my screen here. This, in your testimony, you disagreed with some of the assessments by ORS witness Loy, correct?
Yes.
I don't have it on here. I believe on page 3, lines 24 through 25. You noted I also disagree with Mr. Loy's estimate of developer contributions to the city. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I don't see that on the screen, but it sounds about right.
No, yeah. Unfortunately, I did not include that screenshot. But so continuing on this, on page 4 here, you state there in lines 19 through 21, the phantom developer contributions proposed by Mr. Loy are not known and measurable and must be rejected by the commission, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So did you also, you heard Mr. Wood talk about the as-built drawings that he had from the city, correct?
Yes.
Were you able, did you review the as-builts?
No, I did not.
So I'm going to show you just one page from your report. As we talked about, it's kind of, again, broken down by subdivision. You've got the you've got your side line there in the second column, the location, the subdivision. Did you complete this yourself, or is this information you pulled from Mr. Wood's report?
That was the information. The information in column 3 and column 2 was from the Wood report.
Okay.
The information in column 1 is from the narrow uniform system of accounts.
Right. Okay. What about the information?
Column 5 was also determined from Mr. Wood's report.
Right. And what about the information in column 4, the in-service date?
That was provided by the company based on the as-built drawing. They gave me a list of what the in-service date was for each of those as-built.
Okay. So you know, so presumably you knew when the pipes were in the ground, correct? That's
yes.
That's what the
Although
in-service date.
I mean, the one flaw in that is that would not include any replacements that occurred since the time that the facility was first put into service.
Sure.
So again, that would, I'm just saying that because that would end up with a very conservative estimate of the depreciated original cost.
So if you knew how many feet and type of lines were in these neighborhoods donated by the developers at the time they were donated, you could probably estimate a valuation, correct?
Sure.
And so, right, you might have to factor in that some lines were replaced, but I would think based on how old they were, you know, these pipes have a certain service life, correct?
Yep.
So for instance, if you know, it was donated in, I don't know, 2005, most likely they had not been replaced by 2013, correct?
I think it would depend on what the asset was, yeah.
Sure. But it is possible to estimate the cost in those neighborhoods donated by developers, correct?
Well, again, we don't know. I mean, there was no data that anything was donated. So, I mean, if we knew that something was donated, yes, we could value it. But we just didn't. We had no idea of that here, and there was no records to that effect.
So if there was a deed showing that a developer donated a neighborhood to the city, that might help, right?
If it existed, I don't believe there was a deed that would show any neighborhoods that were developed.
And if the deed had a survey associated with it, that would be even more helpful, wouldn't it?
Again, I would have to see all this stuff to really evaluate its usefulness.
Have you reviewed the City of Columbia's the asset purchase agreement?
No, I did not.
Okay. Let's see. Just a couple more questions. So your figure that you came out with was roughly $18 million. Is that correct?
Yes, and I will say this too. I used much more conservative depreciation estimates than were included in the Wood report. Mr. Wood had estimated a 100-year life on collection systems, and again, you know, that may actually be the physical life of some of those assets. However, I felt in my expertise they were way too long, so I used much more conservative estimates of service life, which again gives a very conservative valuation as opposed to using the 100-year lives, which would result in much higher valuation.
Sure. Did you happen to know how much PUI and the city had negotiated for the purchase price before you started your study?
No, I did not.
Did you know before you finished your study?
No, I did not.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, hearing none. Any redirect? Mr. Hafer?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
No questions.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Clayton, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for your testimony, and you may be, yes, sir.
May Mr. Clayton also be excused?
Yes, Mr. Clayton, you may be excused. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have come to the end of our time for today. We will commence in the morning at 10 a.m. And I know that everybody in this virtual hearing has instructions on what time to call in, and so we can be ready so that we can start at 10. That includes everybody, commissioners. We call in a little earlier tomorrow so we don't have to wait around and start late. So we will start tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and we are in recess until we come back then.